Hi, thank you for joining me in this episode of GradSWE UCLA presents Women in Science, We Have the Power to Change the World. My name is Yifan Gao, a PhD candidate from Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UCLA. I'm also the International Student Event Officer at GradSWE UCLA. GradSWE stands for the Graduate Student Community of Society of Women Engineers. Our goal is to provide support to graduate students and help them shine in their future career. We are going to host a series of interviews to female scientists, and we hope we can encourage more women to join the community of STEM. Our guest today is Professor Rachel Scholes. She's assistant professor from the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of British Columbia. Her areas of interest are nature-based treatment, transformation of emerging contaminants, and safer alternatives. Please check her live website if you are interested in her research. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for joining me in this episode.
Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, so I'm hoping if you could introduce yourself and also your lab to the audience. If you want to share your slides, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rachel Scholes. I'm gonna just pull up my slides here really quick and get those shared on the screen. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so I'll start by saying a little bit about how I got here to UBC, and then talk a little bit about the work that my group is doing around trace organic contaminants. This is me, Rachel Scholes. I grew up in Olympia, Washington, which is, I tell people here in Canada, is over 300 kilometers south of Vancouver. Little unit conversion for you if you're in the US. But yeah, on the West Coast here and the Pacific Northwest. And I went to undergrad at Northwestern University, and I studied chemical engineering in my undergrad, and got to do some chemistry, learn how engineers think. And I got to do some undergrad research that got me really interested in going to grad school. So my next step was, actually I did a Fulbright research exchange in a chemistry department at the University of Otago in New Zealand. And then I did my master's and PhD at UC Berkeley in environmental engineering. And my work there focused on what we call open water treatment wetlands for trace organic contaminants. So I was learning a lot about what we call nature-based systems to treat trace organics. I did a short postdoc at the US Department of Agriculture in their bioproducts research unit. It was during COVID, so there was a lot of limitations to what we were able to do. But I got some experience on a team there around green chemistry, and then came here to UBC. And so now I run a lab that focuses sort of broadly on trace organic contaminants in water. And our main focus is around the removal of these in nature-based treatment systems, as well as understanding sort of transformations that these compounds undergo. And then we have this sort of part that I'm bringing with that green chemistry aspect around identifying safer alternatives to using persistent and toxic chemicals. So to make it a little more tangible, I thought I'd give a couple of examples of projects that we're working on right now, just very briefly. And so the first area that we have been working on, really focusing in on a lot, is looking at contaminants in stormwater runoff, particularly road runoff. You may have heard of 6-PPD quinone, which is a chemical that originates from car tires and is acutely toxic to salmonids, and particularly coho salmon. And so we've been studying the fate of this compound in green infrastructure systems like bioretention cells. And so this is actually an image of a test we ran this summer where we were looking at what happens when we injected a compound and a tracer into a bioretention cell. And you can see you have a water truck here to simulate a big storm event. And then we sort of injected a pulse to study what happened to it in this system. And I'm working here with a postdoc at UBC. He's in the Institute for Resources, Environment, and Sustainability. And he does a lot of work around modeling the fate of organic compounds. I'm a very lab-based chemist, more so, but he does a lot of contaminant fate modeling. So he's been looking at how we can describe where this compound ends up in a system, like how much of it stays in the soil versus exfiltrates out of the system versus gets captured in the underdrain after we do this. So this is an example from that spike test of looking at how much of the 6-PBD quinone sort of stayed in the soil zone versus how much we captured coming out. These are the PhD student undergraduate who are working in my lab on this currently, as well as Tim. And then sort of related to this, we're also looking at, my master's student, Kayla, has been looking at amendments that can enhance contaminant degradation in the subsurface. So we know from studies of soil systems that when you have a reducing soil environment with iron present and you have iron 2, if that soil then gets oxidized, you get the production of hydroxyl radicals. And in some cases, we've seen that in the reduced soils that get exposed to oxygen, they can generate micromolar levels of hydroxyl radical. And so what Kayla is trying to do is take these studies of natural systems that have shown this phenomenon to occur and see if we can engineer this intentionally into a treatment system in the subsurface. So she's been setting up a set of column experiments to look at redox cycling in the presence of iron amendments in soil. And she's also working with an undergraduate in the group named Aisha. And then sort of the last area that's slightly less related is that for the past few years, I've been thinking a lot about reactive nitrogen species, which can form in sunlit waters or in UV-based treatment systems. And when they react with organic compounds in the water, they form byproducts that are often rather toxic because of these nitro and nitroso moieties in the molecular structure. And so we're trying to understand better the conditions under which these form, which compounds form, and how toxic they are. And that's something that we're just getting started on now in as far as lab work at this point. So yeah, so this is my group right now. We're a small and growing group, and some of our collaborators. We love working with great collaborators. I'm always looking for opportunities to connect and meet folks. So really glad to get to chat with you more about it today.
Yeah.
So I'll stop sharing and we can move to more of a conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this, all the introduction to your research and your lab. I am really interested. So what I'm most interested at is the nature water system treatment, nature-based treatment. So I'm from Berkeley. You was my TA, but you taught me the water chemistry class. But I was in the class. It's about wetland treatment. I'm not sure if you were in there. So like in the O'Brien Hall, on the floor of the O'Brien Hall, we have like the small constructed wetland. So if you are asking me about nature-based treatment, I'll be thinking about the small constructed wetland like this. But it seems like it's not just about it. So I was wondering if you could introduce to our audience like what is the nature-based treatment and why it is so powerful, and it can treat like so many contaminants like 6-PBD quinol. So if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question. So yeah, nature-based treatment is sort of a broad term for any kind of treatment system that is designed to mimic natural processes for contaminant removal or degradation. And constructed wetlands are the classic example. We've been using constructed wetlands for wastewater treatment for decades, and they're generally used because they're low cost, passive, don't require energy inputs. And recently, our research has focused on what the fate is of trace organic compounds in these systems, because traditionally they're mostly used for nutrients. And so we've over the past several years, there's been a lot more research coming out about that in constructed wetlands. But in addition, there are like other types of natural systems that we also try to simulate. And a really common one on the West Coast, increasingly common, is these bioretention systems for stormwater and what we call green infrastructure systems. So like the image that I showed there, you couldn't see it very well, but there's sort of a planted area that captures road runoff and it filters through the soil, and that gives a chance to increase the infiltration of that water, and so you get less runoff and flooding, but also what we're trying to do is design them so that they have a contaminant removal effect as well. And typically, like, part of the reason that these systems are effective for a broad range of contaminants is because it's combining several different mechanisms. So you think about a typical water treatment process, you're either trying to
like
settle out solids, or
like
you're trying to
filter,
absorb, or you're trying to like biodegrade things. But in a constructed wetland or a bioretention cell, you have all of those going on. You have absorption, you have bio transformation. Sometimes you have phototransformation if it's a system that has like water pooling on the top. And so because we have such a broad array of contaminants and they're all susceptible to different treatment mechanisms, to have a system that can simultaneously address compounds from those different kind of classes can be really helpful.
That's so cool. I feel like the small, I couldn't call it like constructive wetland. It's like a tank that you showed in the picture that you put like next to the road, or like in the so that that is like a nature. How do you call it? It's like a tank or something.
Yeah. So we had like a rain barrel at the inlet to this system, and that's what we were using to spike into the bioretention cells. So we were like mixing up a experiment there, where we were gonna dose our tracer into the bioretention cell by tipping that rain barrel over. But typically, and what you couldn't really see it in that picture, but there's like an inlet structure where water will pool and then it will slowly trickle into the planted area and in the soil.
That is sort of like beyond my knowledge, but I feel like it's like really, really interesting topic. It's like you can actually combine a lot of treatment like mechanism, like process. I'm not sure if our audience is familiar with that, but like so if we want to treat contaminants, there's like a different ways to do that. And sometimes we use absorption, like microbes can do the work, and also plants can do the work. Also, sunlight can even like break down the contaminants. But sometimes we only use one method. But in the nature treatment system, we can combine like various methods into one tank, and then it was like the contaminants will be more effectively degraded. Oh, that's a really interesting topic. If any of the audience is interested in the topic, please feel free to contact Professor Rachel and then just to get more information about it. So you like a little bit background for the audience is Rachel was my teaching assistant of one of my class. It's called water chemistry, but right now she's assistant professor at UBC. So I wanna to ask you about a few questions, like about your new assistant professor job, because I know it's like there will be a lot of massive projects going on, like you're building up your lab, you're assembling the group, and also you're teaching courses. So do you have any stories or experience you wanted to share to our audience, like especially to the one who plans to follow academia careers?
Yeah, being a faculty is a lot of management and mentoring. It's so fun to get to do research with students and work with really bright students. It's also a lot of time is spent sort of like building the lab, managing it, and all of that. So it requires a lot of different skill sets alongside, of course, you're also teaching, you're also sort of serving in committees and trying to give back to your academic community. But I guess for me, it's been really key to have good time management strategies and strategies to make sure that I'm prioritizing what the sort of important tasks are to get done. And so,
Yeah.
because your attention gets pulled in a lot of different directions compared to being a student or a postdoc. And so I've found it really helpful to have connections with other early career faculty who we can support each other and also like hold each other accountable. So I have actually after this, I have a meeting with another female faculty who started around the same time as me, and we just like have a writing session every week. So we're both spending an hour writing in the middle of the week. No matter what else is going on, you have to stop and write. And so
that's a really supportive atmosphere. Yeah.
So connecting with good other people who are going to help support you is super important.
That's our organization's goal, is to like build up a really supportive community for the female scientists. Yeah, so you're basically building like a small SWE. Yeah. So
and I guess the one other
yeah.
best piece of advice I've gotten is to have fun. It can be overwhelming, and it's just important not to let yourself get overwhelmed with stress. So remember, like, to do the parts of the job that are fun for you. And so that's a senior academics advice to me.
Keep in mind. I'll keep in mind, and I think all the PhD students, like our audience, will keep in mind with like all the suggestions. So I know right now, like a lot of students, they are thinking about pursuing STEM, but like sometimes they wanted to change their major. So for example, you were from like chemical engineering and you switch to like environmental engineering. So I think in your lab, like students will have like diverse background, like academia background. So I was wondering, like, do you have like why you chose to like from chemical engineering to environmental engineering, or do you have any suggestions to the audience that are thinking about like changing their career path, not just to do the same major like as an undergrad?
Yeah, good question. So I chose chemical engineering initially because I really liked chemistry and I wanted to do something related to sustainability or the environment. I didn't really know what. And I was really fortunate as an undergrad to get some research experience. And I started out in a chemical engineering lab where I was assisting a grad student with his experiments. And it was okay, like I got some experience, but I realized I wasn't really excited about that research. And I started doing more environment based projects and realized that that's what I wanted to work on. But really, it took trying out some different things to figure it out, and to figure out whether I wanted to be in chemistry or environmental engineering, or go to grad school in chemical engineering. And so I think for me, it always feels like a big decision, which one am I going to do? But you can course correct, like you can pick what is exciting to you at that time and do it well, and then if you realize that you have another interest to explore, then find opportunities to do that. So I think for me it was required to trying out different things to find what was exciting to me to do for grad school, which is a long period of time to commit to working on one problem.
Yeah, that's true. You did like the master and also the PhD, like both in environmental engineering. So your advice to the undergrads will be to join that and to try out different research they are interested in, and then they will finally find which one, like which direction is they're interested about, and like commit like 5 years or 6 years to that. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big decision, like to switch major or to choose like research direction. So this question is also for our organization, the graduate the Society of Women Engineers. So as a female scientist, what challenges have you met, like in the way of like in the way that you make big decisions, like switch your major and to become like a graduate student, like devote like 6 years into like PhD and also research?
Yeah. I don't know if my decision to do environmental engineering was related to being female. I think to me, I was pretty interested in working more directly on environmental aspects of the problems and being a little bit more applied, um, and being able to use sort of my chemistry knowledge in that way. And I, as far as finding a position or figuring out where I wanted to go next, I think the most important things to me were I wanted to be closer to my family on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And um, and I was lucky to have a position now where I'm close enough to go down for the weekend to Seattle and visit family. And also to some extent balancing two careers. Like my husband is not an academic, and we are fortunate that he's able to work remotely and move to Vancouver. And so I think, there's always challenges as far as balancing where you want to be and at what time. But that to me, we were able to navigate those and end up somewhere that we're really happy.
Yeah, so the balancing is always like a really important topic. I know like in female scientists, they're thinking about their career path. So I think it's not just for female scientists, it's for all the people that are thinking about like pursuing their career dream, like everything. So it's like choosing like the balancing point is like really important. So yeah.
It
So
can be,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Just to say, it can feel like there's an expectation in academia to move wherever the job takes
Yeah,
you.
that's
But
true.
I know that for a lot of people, location is really important. And I think to me also, knowing that was a priority and that that there are good jobs outside of academia too. You can
Yeah, that's
find
true. Yeah.
joy in other jobs in a place that you want to be. So I know lots of folks who have found positions that they love that are in the region that they wanted to be. And so I think not making a decision solely based on what job is available at the time.
Yeah, that's true. It's like academia job, you're just like, like the university that fits your position is only like a few and they're like certain regions. So yeah, it's always like a tough decision. And sometimes people will choose like double hair or there's like a lot of negotiation going on between the job finding the market. Yeah, I heard a lot of stories about it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So my another question is, so during your like you're making like these big decisions and everything, do you have any like female role model that you look up to where you are like pursuing your career?
Yeah, I have lots of role models. I have several good friends who are a few years further ahead of me that really inspire me and also give me advice that help me navigate the sort of next steps in my career throughout. And so there's folks I've known from grad school who were postdocs or who I have met along the way and have just been really generous with their time and their advice. Um, and and I think also, I've had great female role models, but also just other great male academic role models who encouraged me to be a professor or who were great mentors and make me want to pay it forward too.
Yeah, you are one of my female role model because yeah, the first time I became a TA, I was pretty nervous. I don't know what should I do. I was like just think like what Rachel did for you. Like, like I remember one time I had a question before the final exam and you told me I could like I could meet you in the cafeteria and you spend like a 1 hour to answer my questions and help me to like find out what should I prepare for the exam. That I really I feel really good about it. I feel like, oh, that's what TA should do. So like also like not just TA, like teachers or like professors. So at that time I know you would be a great professor like in teaching and also in research. So female role model. You.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it will be our last question is, do you have any advice that you would like to give women that are currently or thinking about pursuing STEM?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of related to your anecdote there, actually, is I think that as what I've observed being an instructor, being a teacher, is
Yeah,
that women are often more shy to ask for help or to seek out opportunities. I get approached by students asking, "Oh, is there any, spot in your lab? Can I do this or that?" But it's much less common, even for my really strong uh, female students to do that than for my male students to do that. And so I would say, don't be shy to ask for help. Don't be shy to seek out opportunities or ask what you can do or ask for advice. Um, and then, yeah, and also going back to sort of my previous point about trying things out and see what fits and see what feels exciting to you. And if there's something a professor who you wish you could like learn about their research, ask them if you can
yeah,
volunteer in their lab or get course credit to work in their lab or something. Because often there are, small projects that you can help with, or you could start working with a grad student and learn what grad school is like a little bit too. I think
yeah,
that's a
that's
big
true.
part of what
Yeah,
you can
take the
get out of it.
initiative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
always like the first step is the hardest part. It's like taking the initiative and trying to like shoot emails or ask graduate students like if there's like any opening in their lab. It's always really hard. So thank you for your suggestion to women like thinking about like doing like pursuing grad school or doing any like research projects in STEM. Thank you so much today for all your stories and your lab introduction, your research, and also the suggestions in both research and academia path, and also your lab and everything. So just thank you for everything, and it's really great to have you here in our channel. Yeah, thank you so much.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. See you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Women in Science. We have the power to change the world. Please hit the subscribe button and follow us to hear more stories from female scientists.